shield wall!
What kind of pirates were they, who merely with a shield and a Viking axe sent shivers down the entirety of Europe? Born ferocious and warlike, Vikings roamed about burning, killing, and looting, becoming the demons of Europe. It was precisely because of the Viking invasions that the 7 warring kingdoms of England, which had been in conflict for over 200 years, united to fight against them, leading to the formation of what is now a unified United Kingdom. Speaking of Viking pirates, their unstoppable shield wall tactic is something you must know about. Today, you're in luck as you will witness how they managed to overwhelmingly defeat an army of 200 with just 20 men. This was the Vikings' second expedition to the west. With the experience from their first expedition, they smoothly landed on the western continent. However, due to the previous robbery, the English had already strengthened their coastal defenses. Upon meeting, both sides immediately clashed, but in front of the mighty Vikings, this small group of Englishmen proved to be no match. What they failed to notice, however, was a soldier who quietly escaped. He reported the Vikings landing to the king. The high-minded Ragnar didn't take the incident seriously, and as usual, he prepared to plunder with about 20 men. Led by a captive, they quickly found a coastal town. Ragnar's eyes gleamed with anticipation, signifying that vast amounts of gold and treasures awaited them. Rollo couldn't wait to urge Ragnar to take action, but Ragnar seemed in no hurry.
What day is it today?
Saturday.
Then we attack tomorrow.
Why?
You will understand tomorrow.
Ragnar was waiting for Sunday. He learned from Athelstan that most Englishmen were Christians who would surely attend church for worship on Sundays, which would be the perfect opportunity for a surprise attack. The next day, as soon as the church bells rang, Ragnar immediately ordered the small squad to strike, catching the town completely off guard. At that time, the town's residents and guards were all in the church hall, with their weapons left outside. Ragnar and his men easily stormed into the church. After dealing with the guards, Ragnar told the civilians that they were only after wealth and would not harm them as long as they did not resist. After saying this, he led his men to start looting the valuable items in the hall. In contrast, the audacious Canute wasn't so honorable. He barged into a civilian house and immediately forced a beautiful girl onto a table. Luckily, this scene was witnessed by Lagertha, who tried to stop Canute's brutality but was pushed away by him. Enraged, Lagertha drew her dagger and stabbed it into his back. Unexpectedly, Canute's fighting prowess was astonishing. He first swung his axe, killing the girl beneath him, and then subdued Lagertha. Just as Canute was about to continue his assault on Lagertha, he didn't realize she had awakened. Lagertha grabbed Canute's vital parts and then pulled out his dagger, stabbing it fiercely into his heart. Meanwhile, Ragnar's looting had already finished. Just as they were gathering in the square to prepare to return, Ragnar realized Canute was missing. Lagertha told her husband what had happened. Ragnar knew this was bad news because Canute was Earl's man. Moreover, there were no witnesses, making it hard to clear their name even with the truth on their side. Worse still, when they returned to the shore, they found King El's large army already waiting for them. Facing the large English army, the Vikings showed no fear. This was the first time the English witnessed the terrifying Viking shield wall. The horror of the Viking shield wall lay in how their round shields overlapped to form an impenetrable barrier. By exerting full force behind the shield wall, they made it impossible for the enemy to penetrate, while their own archers could shoot cold arrows from behind the wall, gradually weakening the enemy's strength.
Your death is on its way! It means you have had your way! It must die someday! Don't get found!
When the enemy was thrown into complete disarray, morale completely shifted to the Vikings' side. They opened the shield wall and fearlessly started a frenzied slaughter. In this manner, they devoured all 200+ soldiers. Witnessing such brave Viking warriors, the enemy leader Wigia immediately fled on horseback.
Happen, my lord Wigia!
Sire, I have never in my life seen men fight as these Northmen fight. Believe me, there's something devilish in the way they look, in their lack of fear in the face of death.
My lord, that is just a counsel of despair. Are these pagans not men like we are? Do they not bleed when they are cut? Or do they have wings and tongues of fire?
No, sire.
Who are they?
We captured 2 of them who were guarding their boat. We couldn't understand anything they said at all, except one word. Ragnar.
From that moment on, Ragnar's fame reached King El's ears. After burying a few comrades who died in battle, the expedition team once again returned to the port with a large amount of loot. The people lined the streets to welcome Ragnar, who had already become a hero to the Vikings in their hearts. All of this was observed by Earl Haraldsson, who faintly felt that Ragnar was threatening his position. At that moment, Haraldsson discovered that his man Canute had not returned, so he began inquiring about Canute's whereabouts. Ragnar did not hide the truth and directly confessed that he had killed Canute. Haraldsson finally found an opportunity to deal with Ragnar and immediately ordered his capture. To ensure Ragnar's downfall, Haraldsson even sought Ragnar's brother, Rollo. First, Haraldsson tried to sow discord between the brothers by telling Rollo not to always live in Ragnar's shadow. Then, he promised to give his only daughter in marriage to Rollo, making him the next lord and so on. He even utilized his still charming wife, aiming to have Rollo slander Ragnar with the accusation of premeditated murder. After being tempted, Rollo began to waver. The next day, the trial assembly officially began, with the Earl and the people all making their appearance. Haraldsson accused Ragnar of the crime of killing his own confidant without any reason, stating that Ragnar's motive was to monopolize the treasures brought back from the western lands. Just when public opinion seemed to lean towards Haraldsson's side, Lagertha stepped forward, stating that it was she who killed Canute, and detailed the attempted assault by Canute. However, Haraldsson refused to accept her testimony on the grounds that they were husband and wife, and claimed he had a witness who saw everything at the scene. When Rollo stepped forward, everyone, including Ragnar, was stunned.
You say you are a witness to the death of Knut Tjodolf.
Yes.
You swear this upon your arm ring.
Yes, I was there. Ragnar Lothbrok killed him.
In cold blood?
No, Lord. For a good reason. What Ragnar Lothbrok has sworn is true. Your half-brother was caught raping a Saxon woman, then he attempted to rape Ragnar's lawful wife, Lagertha, the shield maiden.
Haraldsson was taken aback, not expecting that even with his daughter and wife involved, they could not sway this man. Rollo's testimony directly declared Ragnar innocent and ensured Ragnar also received half of the treasures from the Western expedition. Later that night, the expedition team gathered for a party. Lagertha took a moment to express her gratitude to Rollo in private, but Rollo's next words left Lagertha speechless.
I didn't do it for him. I did it for you.
While they were all drunkenly celebrating, assassins sent by Haraldsson quietly sneaked in. Shortly after, a large group of armed assassins burst into the room, but they underestimated the strength of Ragnar and his team. The members of the expedition were veterans of many battles, and in just a few minutes, they had dealt with all the assassins. By the time Haraldsson found out, the assassins he sent were already being returned as corpses in a wagon. This battle undoubtedly marked the complete fallout between Ragnar and Haraldsson. At this moment, Ragnar was undergoing a fierce internal struggle. He went alone to the edge of a cliff and squatted there for a day and a night, debating whether to defy the ancestral teachings and seize an opportunity for rebellion or continue to be like fish on a chopping board, at the mercy of others. His fiery gaze seemed to already provide us with the answer. With an old man's scream, a horrific massacre that devastated the village officially began. Upon Haraldsson's command, his soldiers started a frenzied slaughter of the unarmed villagers. The innocent villagers could only seek refuge, dying without ever understanding whom they had offended. Haraldsson coldly watched as, in his bid to preemptively deal with Ragnar and drive him to death, he didn't hesitate to have an entire village buried with Ragnar. At this time, Ragnar was hunting in the mountains, completely unaware of the tragedy unfolding in the village. Upon hearing the screams outside, Lagertha immediately grabbed weapons for her son and daughter. She didn't rush to flee but instead instructed them to hide for self-preservation. She knew in her heart that her husband would return to save them, risking life and limb. When Ragnar heard the continuous screams, he didn't hesitate for a moment and immediately turned around. Rushing back, the village was ablaze, and the slaughter continued as Ragnar descended from the mountain, displaying the strength of a war god. But even the fiercest warrior is ultimately no match for overwhelming numbers. Ragnar's thigh was deeply slashed, yet for his family, he managed to kill 2 more men with all his might. However, just as Ragnar stealthily returned home, an arrow pierced through his body, shot by Sven who had discovered him. Enduring the excruciating pain, Ragnar broke the arrow, then went inside the house and lifted the floorboards, allowing his family to escape from the attic to the boat for refuge. To buy time for his family to escape, Ragnar chose to face Haraldsson and his soldiers alone. At this moment, he was covered in blood, and the wound on his leg forced him to kneel before Haraldsson. By dropping his axe, Ragnar signaled he was giving up resistance. Haraldsson, looking down on him, asked if he confessed his guilt. Ragnar appeared to submit, all the while stealthily glancing towards the direction his family was escaping to. What Haraldsson failed to realize was that Ragnar's actions were actually buying time. Once he was sure his family had escaped, Ragnar, as if aided by the gods, swiftly grabbed an enemy's axe and threw it with force, then seized the opportunity to escape on a horse amidst the chaos.
Burn the house!
Bring him back alive.
Yes, Lord.
Hiding on the boat, his family watched their home burn, their hearts filled with mixed emotions. At this moment, 3 cavalrymen were desperately chasing after Ragnar. The intense jolting made it impossible for Ragnar to continue. He had no choice but to dismount and hide under a hillside to temporarily evade capture. But how long could he hide this little trick? Soldiers who had doubled back near a creek eventually discovered Ragnar. With his last bit of strength, Ragnar dragged his bloodied body to the top of the mountain, but the despairing truth was that there was a cliff several dozen meters in front of him. Seeing the soldiers catching up, Ragnar knew the end was near. So, he closed his eyes and jumped off the cliff. The soldiers, daunted by the height, dared not even look and returned to report back. Little did they know, Ragnar's dive was near his family's boat. Athelstan quickly jumped into the water to rescue Ragnar, who, fortunately, still clung to his last breath by divine favor. Haraldsson, upon learning of Ragnar's leap into the sea, insisted on seeing the body, dead or alive. He commanded his men to continue searching for Ragnar, insisting that they must find him by any means necessary. Meanwhile, the severely injured Ragnar was taken to Floki's residence. Floki, Ragnar's most trustworthy friend, was not only an excellent shipbuilder but also had some knowledge of medicine. Floki performed surgery on Ragnar, using a red-hot surgical knife for disinfection and stopping the bleeding. Then, with a series of folk remedies, Floki ultimately saved Ragnar's life. During his recovery, a member of the expedition team, Torstein, visited Ragnar. Torstein informed Ragnar that the members of the expedition were under surveillance. Fortunately, his fondness for hunting allowed him to traverse the jungle and sneak away to visit him. Floki prepared a meal for Torstein, and when Torstein turned around, he saw Floki's beautiful girlfriend.
Oh, don't wriggle your maggot in her face. She's taken. Sit down.
At night, Floki invited Torstein to sleep with them.
If you don't come now, I promise you will regret it.
The warm hospitality of the Vikings is indeed well-deserved.